Speaking with a lectern or no lectern for a better presentation. When it comes to speaking,
Videos that will make you master speaking and grow your personal brand.
when it comes to speaking, do you prefer to use a lectern like a podium, or do you think that is necessary depending on the speech you are giving? There's really no one answer to this question. We grew up with the professor who stood behind his or her podium, lectern, and lectured to us. Now that is unavoidable if you're the president of your country. You need the bulletproof glass if you're out in public. There's a purpose and a reason to be behind a lectern. If you have an audience and if you are out of frame and you got to stay behind the lectern, your video team told you that, then you've got to stay there. Under very unique conditions have I ever had to stand behind a lectern and not move. When I spoke for TEDx one time, there was a circle. I liken that to a lectern. There was a red circle I had to stay within because that was the frame of the video team. So that depended on the situation. Here's what you need to consider: the elevation and if it helps. When you are speaking from a lectern, it means that you can be seen just about anywhere. That's because of the placement. It's usually higher than the rest of the surroundings. That's helpful if you only have a step or more to walk up. That is possibly a benefit of using a lectern. It is also a place where everyone will look at you. It is a focused visual, and if anything, it makes you harder to hear and see when you're away from the lectern if the sound is connected there. There's also the consideration, the amplification of sound. There's usually a microphone as well at a lectern that will allow you to stand behind and without having to strain your voice if it's a small audience. There usually is a microphone that is attached if your audience is small. My rule of thumb for whether or not you need a microphone because of the sound piece is an audience of 30 or less, no mic. Depends on your situation. If you have an audience of about 2,000 people, you're going to need to reach those people that are in the back of the audience or in the back of the church. You're going to need a microphone, possibly a lectern, if you're a minister and you're looking down at a Bible, for instance. You may have a disadvantage if you step away from the lectern. Even if you have a strong voice, will it be heard if you're not mic'd properly other than using the microphone that is attached to the lectern? You can definitely make up for that with different microphones if you've got a very loud voice or a small audience. It can be used for emphasis. Now, the weight of the lectern. Lecterns are utilized by CEOs, politicians, and members of the clergy for a reason. The lectern holds a lot of weight by nature. Your credibility might increase while speaking from a podium as long as your message and delivery are respectful and respectable. Credibility is essential in this situation. The power of association with a lectern is irrefutable, undeniable. Presidents, prime ministers stand behind a lectern when they deliver State of the Union addresses. When they address the shareholders, they're behind a lectern. Also, when you're next to a lectern and you're on stage, lectern's advantages of weight are enhanced by the speakers who have comparable physical presence. If you're a big person, this can help. Tall speakers are more advantageous with this lectern use. On the other side, shorter presenters might get lost behind the lectern. Take that into account whether you are tall or on the shorter side. In the worst case, a speaker who is extremely short could step on a platform to rise up. That's possible with a stool. Of course, this is completely negated by leaving the area behind the podium because they might realize, he's a shorty, she's a shorty. If you get back behind the podium and you step on the stool and you're up again. So if you come up to the podium and you're standing on it before the curtain opens, before you're introduced, you can do that. Make sure that the curtain closes before you step down, or they're going to know that you snowed them, that you were almost dishonest in your presentation. Now, let's talk about the clergy and their reaction. You wouldn't be wise to move out from behind the lectern if the presiding clergy member would take issue with it. Keep in mind that you are the guest in this situation. Therefore, don't be disrespectful to your host. Asking them in advance is the greatest approach to gauge their level of receptivity. If you're invited to speak and there's a minister that's there. So if their expectation, if you're in a church type of a situation, is to ask in advance. Be prepared. Always be prepared. Know the rules of the game before. So in general, you should always incorporate these inquiries, and will it work with the audience? Describe where you'd like to stand and why you prefer to stay away from the podium if you've been asked to stand behind the podium. Get all this cleared up. You don't want to do it with a live audience in front of you. It could create discomfort. Also, does this match the expectations of the listeners? You might be asked to address the congregation from the podium, depending on customs and culture there. Each situation is different. I highly recommend you get familiar beforehand. Some people could feel offended if the lectern is never interrupted. Again, the only way to determine this is speak with the churchgoers in advance. Understand your audience, do a little research, and understand what they expect, and don't deviate too much. The visibility of your gestures when you have a podium. If you release yourself from the lectern, you can use a larger variety of gestures, provided it does not cause a disadvantage. A large portion of your body is hidden when you have a lectern in front of you. If you are portly and or pregnant, and you are then all of a sudden pulled out and they're seeing your true height, they're seeing your full body, they're seeing everything, you're exposing your vulnerability. Does this make sense? Versus you were just shown from your chest upward, take that into account. If you're speaking at a health event and you are portly and you're talking to them about weight loss and you're overweight, you've just lost total credibility. Be cognizant of that. Moving away from the podium does make you feel or be perceived as more vulnerable. You can use that to your advantage. One speaker pointed out becoming closer to your audience can often help your communication efforts. I certainly believe that. In addition to becoming closer to your audience physically, you will be able to be free of the lectern's symbolic barrier, because there is a barrier in between you and the audience. You become more effective as you remove these obstacles, both real and imagined. So if you are fit and toned and you're speaking to a group of fitness professionals and they want to see that you are one of them and you are fit and professional, get out from behind the podium. It plays to your advantage. Use the podium. Don't let it negate your ability to connect with your audience. You can become a better speaker by understanding all these small details, because little hinges swing big doors. We'll see you in the next video.